Ladies and gentlemen, episode 19, Unification Party, coming to you from Unification Party headquarters. Co-host Adrian Blizzard. What is going on in politics, my friend? Say hello.
Hey everybody. Um, Politics this week, a lot of, I think, good things since we've last spoken to our audience. That looks to be some sort of a peace summit for Russia, Ukraine going on in Turkey this upcoming Friday, I believe, or this weekend-ish area. And it looks like Zelensky may or may not come, blah, blah, blah. That seems to be the talk. No one expects Putin to come. But at the end of the day, it's a step in the right direction there. The little bit I hear out of Pakistan and India, it seems to be a lot of rabble-rousing as usual, a lot of bluster, but more or
It's
less.
like those guys who are doing the high stepping at the border, just a lot of show, beating their
Yeah,
chests and high
which seems to
stepping.
be their, yeah, like I think both of them are probably smart enough that they know a full-on war is just not good. They've had those before. And so hopefully everything keeps going that direction. It looks like it's going that way. Um, Things look bad, I would say, overall. I would say for Canada, like everything else looks pretty good. Like on the shitty note, the little bit I've seen, it seems like nothing really good for Canada overall. But internationally, it looks like maybe cooler heads are going to prevail, and maybe we'll get some peace going on. Now, I haven't heard anything really that updated wise Israel Gaza. You got anything on that front? Like I assume it's just more of the same old.
Yeah, I don't.
Unfortunately.
I find uh, Israel Gaza is an age-old battle. Pakistan, India, age-old battle. Ukraine, Russia, I don't know how age, I mean, it's age old in some regards. There's different ethnic groups there, so I'm sure they've been clashing and there's more beef there than we probably know, going back centuries, probably. Uh, I don't expect any of these things to progress in any sort of linear form to conclusion in the near future. I think we'll
Well,
be
the fact
here
that
6 months from now with Gaza updates and India, Pakistan, or if not into Pakistan, it'll be, I don't know, some other place, some other time doing some other of the exact same thing.
yeah, war does seem to have a tendency of being one thing we're all good at.
Well, that is the one nice thing about Canada, right? I mean, as much as we may, bitch and moan about the situation here, no one's even saber rattling. The best we could do was like elbows up, and that was as aggressive as we got here. And now I guess we refuse to shop in, you know, Niagara Falls outlet malls, and everybody in Florida who can't afford to go there anymore is selling their house. So I mean, we're lucky in that regard. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Our war is not kinetic. Our war is just financial, which is just, I don't know. I was thinking about it today, and it does seem like just the perfect storm. Like for if you look at the charts of the Canadian economy, whether it's like wages going up versus the cost of living, or whether it's job growth or this or that, they're all bad, and they've been bad for a while. But it seems to be more mainstream. And then you compare that to like whatever you want to call Trump's doing. It's certainly some sort of a revival of something which may or may not be the middle class. It's looking it seems to be he seems also just to be the only person who mentioned them like actually do something for the middle class in 30 years relatively
Yeah, you're
whether
right. It may not translate to middle class wealth, but at least there's a chance with if he's creating economic movement. And I mean, you
well
talk about trillions of dollars of investment coming back. I know they're just pledged and they haven't started, but if even 50% of what has been said happens, like these are big numbers,
yeah
like monstrous numbers.
and even on a similar note but like kind of left field, like I was watching a Tim Pool today and he was interviewing this Texas congressman and they were passing legislation to like forbid the Chinese government or Chinese people from owning like land in Texas. Apparently, it got on their radar when somebody's tried to purchase 31,000 acres next to an Air Force base. they were, but like those are the types of policies that you would do if you cared about your country. You know what I mean? Whereas like our country, and I'm not saying like we need to do stuff like that, But like when you just look at the comparison and the contrast, it's just like,
Well, are you familiar? I don't know if this is still the case, and anybody in the comments can certainly set me straight. But I remember, and now this is going back 30 years ago, and they had restrictions on Prince Edward Island that I think at the time, again, this is more about principle than me being exactly right. But you could only buy less than 10 acres if you were a non-resident. So if you, unless you were a resident of the island, then you could buy unlimited land and farm it or do nothing with it. But if you were a non-resident, you could only buy a 10-acre parcel or smaller. And I think instead of restricting, like we don't let the Chinamen buy land here in Idaho, some sort of more restrictive policies like that should be in place. Like no single individual can buy more than 10 acres and a house.
or
You
even
know,
like no foreign individual can own land within 50 kilometers or miles of a military installation.
we'll see. And they do that same sort of thing in Mexico. Mexico considers that you can't, in Mexico, you can't own property along the ocean, and they all have to be in sort of collectives and these weird cooperatives and whatnot. And you can't own land. I think it's, again, this is not about me being correct on the number, but if I remember something correctly, like 50 kilometers of the border is like a no owning of land for foreigner zone.
Which isn't
And but
rational. It just makes simple
yeah,
sense.
so the point being is you could certainly put restriction. You can still have people bringing wealth to your country. Hey, sure, buy a beautiful, Park Avenue penthouse for $20 billion there, Ho Fan from Hong Kong. But well, unfortunately, we can't let you buy the 31,000 acres directly
Wawa.
beside a Air Force base. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course, that makes perfect sense.
it's very rational. No, and
Well, if elected as Unification Party leader, these are the kind of common sense policies we would put in place. That,
absolutely.
come and enjoy, but don't, chill out.
On another note of Canadian like issues, I saw an interview of Preston Manning today, and he was discussing like the rise of Western separatism, and like essentially how it's like it's not just Alberta, it's also like Saskatchewan and like parts of Manitoba and British Columbia feel the same way. Obviously, it's clearly the rural parts. Like I haven't seen it on a map, but I'm sure it's not Winnipeg and Vic Vancouver.
Yeah.
But and essentially too, like supposedly the bloc, like their whole goal is obviously to separate at all times. So like you got that going on the rise. So it's like Canada's been pretty divided, and then you throw like the increased immigration numbers, which is like 5 times the normal number in the last few years, and so it's like hard for even the new Canadians to so to say acclimatize or situate themselves, you know what I mean? So there's just tension all over the map. It just doesn't seem like good days for Canada. It seems like even if we had a Pierre or even like Wayne Gretzky elected by 100% of the country, with Wayne Gretzky was the prime minister, and he was just like, I'm here to help people. Like it would still be tough, you know what I mean? Like let
Oh,
alone
well, do you remember before the election, we were talking in one of the episodes, and you asked me a question about, like, who might win this, that, or something. But the analogy I made was that Canada was a big boat with a huge hole in the hull, and we're going to fight about who gets to be the captain, who's going to drive it. And I feel exactly that's what you're saying, and I feel exactly the same way. Like we spoke about it a couple of episodes ago about the housing affordable. There is no solution. There is no way in the present systems that we have in place in Canada to have affordable housing. There's when we have declining population, unless we have mass immigration. If we have mass immigration, we don't have the infrastructure. We also don't have the ability to assimilate and integrate without having a breakdown in social cohesion. Like these are all problems that have no solution, that it doesn't matter who's in charge,
it,
sadly.
the boat's a perfect analogy because it's like the Americans are the people who got off their boat and are on the land hunting, and we're like, no, 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 but we fish here. We're fishermen. Like we can fish on the boat, but it's like, yeah, yeah. Why don't we just? Yeah, but sometimes there's nothing to hunt on the land. Yeah, I know. Sometimes there isn't, but like this fishing thing isn't going to last forever. We got to try something different, and it might be
Yeah,
tough, but yeah, and that's where I just think like it's almost like it's one of those things where inevitably the problem will just be fixed by God and simple physics. Because it can only go on so long. And when the experiment is so contrasted, it'll literally be like that map when you see South Korea with the lights on and North Korea without the lights on at nighttime, like on a satellite image. Like
yeah,
we're on pace for that extreme. And yeah, it's wild. It does seem like quite interesting. It would be. I think it would be a bad time. It's quite interesting for us, being as we're not like rich small businessmen who employ like 20 people in our local community. You know what I mean? Relatively, because I feel bad for people who like have that, like that, like that semi upper class. Like they're not upper class yet, but like they worked hard and like they're just kind of like, what's going on? Like I got these new taxes maybe coming at me. Like I need some clarity. And you saw that today. Speaking of clarity, like Trump and China just remotely got close to a kind of a deal, and the markets went wild, and everyone seems happy. It just seems like we just need to do the opposite in Canada. Whatever we've been doing, just like opposite of it, and then like we need to
yeah,
do that for a little while.
yeah. But that's not like we seem to be. It seems to be that again. We've talked about this before. The globalist versus populist, and it seems to be Canada is on the vanguard of the most progressive Western in quotes democracy, and we're hell bent on it. Like we want that as a it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be, or we since maybe 5 to 10% of the population has any real in-depth interest in politics to look beyond the sort of the surface of things are great from the CBC and CTV and whatnot. Maybe people don't look any deeper and are happy enough, but it seems like I don't understand it. They don't. They seem to want to be in this boat, and the last election just proved it. Here we're sniffing around majority territory because every day goes by, there's all of a sudden another.
It's our county winter election.
There's
Yeah,
another. There's another riding up for grabs with by one vote or half a vote or.
just crazy shenanigans. Like
I'm
you
not
just,
saying there's any shenanigans. I'm just
I,
saying
I
it's.
am, I am declaring it. Just as far as like, it's one of those things where it's like it's unusual, and when you have like seven unusual things in a row, okay, that's very
Yeah,
unusual.
but six of the seven things may turn out later to be half truths or unsubstantiated, whichever one that is, unsubstantiated. That's it.
I'm a
Uh,
political junkie, and I don't recall ever hearing like recounts like this.
yeah, but
Like,
it wouldn't have been the issue because people just had faith in the institution, and then you had America went the way it did at least two elections back with talk of like, going even back to when Hillary lost, like, oh, there's something going on. And then Donald Trump claiming the election. And now that's just part of elections now. It doesn't matter. That's why
it
you
is,
don't
but
remember it.
another part of elections seems to be like we pointed out in Europe with Romania and France. Like, oh, it's like, oh, the guy we didn't like won, so he's like arrested or not allowed to run. Like, so it clearly just seems to be like, why does everything seem to favor one way? It's kind of like you saw in the states in the last 10 years. If you started to look into things on both sides after a while, everything always seemed to be a mistake one way. It was always a mistake against Trump. You know what I mean? To make Trump look bad. The mistake never happened to make Trump look
Well,
good,
absolutely.
right?
I mean, in some regards, you could make the argument if you were like, if you just came down here and looked at it objectively, you came from some other place, another planet, and then you were presented with how it works here and the history, a little bit of the history, and then presented with the man Donald Trump and realized there's probably never been a man who's been put more through a microscope and under scrutiny and had a system that's railed against him. In some regards, you could claim the man might be, in some regards, a saint.
Yeah.
Like my life couldn't like my
Nobody's
life
life.
couldn't My life couldn't have stood up to that kind of like scrutiny going all the way back. I'd have a couple of embarrassing moments that might make me not so popular with the kids.
Well, and if you notice, like he actually got some good press in the news this week. This is the one area where like everyone loves Trump. European media, North American media. He's uh he's on that phone call with all the European leaders talking about giving all these arms to Ukraine. Okay, he's throwing money at the war machine like, "Oh, he's an angel." Like everyone's a fan of him. Like on all fronts. That was
He
kind of
seems to be
funny.
winning. Seems to be winning right now. A lot of winning. Even the news is indicating like he had the trade deal with England, which I mean I know when you look at it, there's not much
But it's out of the
meat
way.
to it, but it's still Trump in the news every day, making deals, making deals, making deals. Like even if you're against him, and even if you're hearing that the deal isn't that great, and the negative MSNBC or whatever MSNBC version, like the deal's terrible, and insert whatever exaggeration here, you're still going to be going, oh, okay, he seems to be making some deals.
Well, and that's definitely for sure. Like, and that's why, like, as a Canadian, the contrast is super stark. Like, it's one thing to see both things, and again, there's definitely some L's for Trump. Like, I heard about I was Jimmy Dore today. He had this guest on who used to work for the government talking about Trump's a big fan and a big proponent of the digital ID system. I think they call it Real ID or something like that. And um, and apparently the Trump administration has done more to like ram through legislation that would have like the so to say global track and trace ID system in place more than anybody. And I was thinking about that. I wanted to run it by you. Let's say for sure we live in a world where what I just said is true. That's what the Trump administration is doing, and they're doing more of that than ever. I thought try and be optimistic on the matter. It was thinking like, what if they're smart enough and they looked at it and they were like, look, if we don't do this, the other guy will. Somebody's going to do this at some point. So like it kind of sucks, but like if we can implement it, maybe we can set it up in a way where there's like some sort of autonomy, like relative to like it's not a complete, Orwellian tracking tool. Like there is a bit of like user control in it of some sort. I don't know what that could be, but like that's just kind of my way of thinking about something as extreme as that. Your thoughts?
Well, okay, so let's go all the way back. I grew up in an ultra evangelical home, Christian evangelical home. So the number one pastime of evangelicals, the number one, is to be terrified of the end times when you're required to engage in commerce to take on the mark of the beast, right? So
Yes.
from a young age, I've been preconditioned to be terrified of this eventuality, right? So now some
Okay.
people in the past said that, it was a social insurance number was the mark. I mean, I'm not getting into the mark of the beast business. I'm not making fun either. I'm just saying this is what I've been primed to be afraid of. So I am a fierce advocate for privacy, and you should be able to go about your business without being tracked and traced. But that all being said, I think we all kind of gave up on that when we all started carrying our smartphones around with us.
Ah.
So I know, and there's a lot of that's not mandatory. Our data supposedly is, it's not personalized. It's just accumulated for, statistical purpose. Whatever. I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying is these the technology is too juicy and too good. Like even assume a benevolent government. Let's not assume the worst. I'm just saying even a benevolent government, a streamlined digital ID all in one place, digital wallet. Like, look how easy it is. Like, oh, I lost my computer, but I've got my phone, and now I've got a new computer, and everything's just over there right now at the click of a button, right? Like, having all that, we can all agree, is super convenient and super easy. And so, at first, it will be voluntary, and you'll get special privileges. Like, I know with those Real ID driver's licenses, you go through not as strict a security clearance at the airport, and then
They
slowly
get
that will
beneficiary.
be, yeah, yeah. So slowly that will be, eventually, you're the slug who you're the last guy who doesn't have it. And every time you go to the airport, it's an hour and a half extra. Oh, and you're just having to miss your flight every time. And you just get so frustrated with it that you finally get the digital ID or whatever. So, I mean, we know how this goes. So when you ask me what my personal feeling on it is, for one, I've been primed as a child in a box to be terrified of this type of thing.
Yeah.
Two, I have come to grips with the fact that even if I thought all of that was true and real, it's inevitable. And three, the life I'm living now, I'm gearing up so that if there were lockdowns like they had at COVID, if there were like, carbon restrictions and I can no longer fly, I've built my off grid cabin in a place where walking in the woods, canoeing, kayaking, as long as they still allow us to, stay in our homes, then I guess, life will be go on the same
Yeah,
for
as long as
me.
you're not getting on a train car, you can go hunting and fishing.
I guess, like, I mean,
Can't plan
I'm
for
not
everything.
worried. Like, no, most of all, what will happen is this will be like, just like anything government wants to do. Like, look at Amazon. Like,
So do
Amazon's incredible.
you agree with my point though? So it's like maybe there's like it's not completely nefarious. Maybe there is like some
No, of
benevolence where they're
course
like,
it's,
yeah,
well,
it's not
no,
making. Why don't we bring it to the people and let them know,
well, sure,
the
that could be
better way
part
it
of
could
it.
be.
But I mean, it's just like the police force, you could argue in the first time when they said, well, we're going to have a, let's say, to take Ontario, we're going to have a provincial police. Someone could have said, like, oh, well, putting all that like under one command, a whole province's worth of police, that, whew, well, that could really be used against the people and we could, be power. But I mean, that's not what they did, right? They used it, for the most part to police the
From
province in a judicial way, right? And it's be the same thing. Like Amazon is digitized buying and selling to such a degree that you point at something with your stupid fat finger on your touchscreen, and in a day, it shows up on your doorstep. I mean, if the government, and even now it's even better, can integrate, your entire like, oh, here's your heart rate from your last doctor's appointment with your tax return and your whatever other government issued information is all at a, easy glance. And then of course, it's one step after that to be worn in a watch or a bracelet to put in a chip in the, back of your hand or your forehead, whatever, so,
okay, Mr. Minority
maybe
Report,
the
let's
or
just. I'm just
Mr.
talking about.
Book or Mr. Book of Revelation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's yeah. No, I see what you're saying. At the end of the day, I do think you are the biggest thing that I agree with you there on is as gloomy as your prognostication was, is it will be more carrot than stick. It'll be like,
It's
yeah, like if you
always
get
been
the chip,
cancer.
like you don't have to wait in the emergency room. Like the room's waiting for you. Like
Yeah,
whereas like, oh,
absolutely.
you don't have the chip, like yeah, but
And that jives with what they're talking about, like social credit scores and this, that, and the carbon credit scores. They'll be,
I've heard tell of not on the same level, but on a different note, but like insurance companies buying GPS data and charging people accordingly. Which
for
again,
how
that's one of
far they
those
travel or how
or
fast they
how
travel.
much they break and how fast they
Well, I
travel and
mean,
stuff.
but that technology is already in place. Like if you were willing to put one of these boxes in your car, I remember
Exactly.
hearing about this,
Exactly.
and then it monitored your how you drive, and you got
My,
extreme discounts if you're
my
cool.
my Waze nickname was Speedy. Like that, it just automatically created that nickname for me because yeah, I would mostly use Waze on the 401 coming home after a long weekend. So you're just like trying to get through Toronto. And
Yeah.
anyways, um, yeah, no,
No, I mean the
I'm
surveillance
not
state,
surprised.
surveillance state is inevitable in every regard. The technology would just get better and better and better. I mean, can you imagine? Like, I mean, I'm not even talking again. Forget. I'm not even suggesting that this is all like evil guys rubbing their hands behind the scenes. Like, how could you not like? Can you imagine? Like, my mind doesn't even have to go that far to imagine every city block in the city of Toronto or New York or wherever has a drone, multi-camera lens angle over every intersection, like an infinite net over the entire city, just scanning, like listening for gunshots, and they can triangulate the location. You know, you've heard of that. It's already existing
Much
technology.
better. They
Yeah,
have
exactly. But
it in some of the communities
yeah,
right after
but
the
you,
D
my
collapse
point is,
in
it
Chicago.
exists. So
Yeah.
I'm not making up some like dystopian future. Like we're already in a place, and then these little drones can just go and to like a
No,
rooftop port
and where they
and
get people
charge
like
in the
me and you
sun.
is like, we're law-abiding citizens. What's the big deal? It's just going to get rid of the bad guy real quick. It's like, that's how the movie starts. And then in the middle of the movie, the
Of
guy's
course,
writing an
yeah.
email. Someone reads his email and doesn't like the tone he takes, and now he's in trouble. So that's the
Well,
issue, right?
that is how it goes. But
Yeah.
again, I mean, all these things are like what, even if all this was gonna, like, let's say I looked into the future and I was like, ooh, I ate the mushrooms, I had the magic mirror, and I saw in 30 years from now, my end of life, and my vision at the end of life was, oh, all the cities are surveillance states. And, you know, if you say the wrong thing, you know, all the worst things that we can imagine happen. Well, what would I do? Well, I guess what I would do is what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
I would try to avoid the city and stay rural and create a network and learn my skills and learn how to do what I can.
On a
So,
completely different note, I have something I'd like to show you, Jay. Just not to kind of derail your point you were making, but I think you made it.
oh, I
There was
made it.
something interesting I saw in England today or this week. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, tweeted this, which I thought was like not like par for the course of what he usually would say, espouse, so to say.
Yeah, I can see that. For our listeners on, Keir Starmer said, if you want to live in the UK, you should speak English. That's common sense.
Now, I do believe the real tweet. There's another sentence underneath that says something to the effect of like, "We're gonna raise." So I don't know if it's social expectance on like all new applications, something along those lines. So I guess
So they're going to clamp down on immigration as it stands, or at least he's signaling that that's the intention.
that's like by the metrics of what I've heard, immigration's been like in England for the last 20 years. That sounds like the closest to daddy's home, and he's gonna take his belt off that I've heard ever. Like it seems like, hey,
It seems like in this
the
day and age,
rules
that's
we've had on the book,
pretty,
we're going to enforce those now.
yeah, pretty bold. Yeah, pretty bold statement. You should be speaking English. Like that's the kind of thing that would, like 2 years ago, if I said that to an immigrant on the bus, they'd be doxing me and getting me, fired from my job. So the fact that
This
he's
year, you'd
saying
get a
that openly,
GoFundMe. You'd get a GoFundMe going this year.
yeah, that's
Uh,
kind of crazy, eh? Well,
well, the
Rochester,
internet term is,
Minnesota.
yeah, black fatigue, they're throwing the term around. And it seems like that Carmelo Anthony case is just so atrocious. Where you're just like, more or less, it looks like sitting in a chair, was asked to move and stabbed a kid. And everyone's like supporting him. And you're just like, okay, come on now. You can't just, that guy's, what are we doing here? Like, that's wild. So that's what it seems like. Yeah, that one's got the culture wars of brewing. There's people talking about conspiracy that it's a psyop because of like large donations on each side, like a large $10,000 anonymous donations for each of them. That Shiloh girl and the Carmelo Anthony one. But it's got the internet ablaze right now.
Well, I understand it's big news, but race stuff is not my bag.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, it's so far from being the reality of my day-to-day life that I
Well,
don't
that
even know
issue
how
doesn't
to
affect.
comment on it.
That issue's not a Canadian
Well,
issue.
not in the same way. Well, I mean, we did. I mean, we've adopted aspects of it, like BLM had an effect here. It's become like BLM had an effect in
All the
Ireland.
Western
That's
nations.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And they use the same chants. Like in England, it's like
yeah,
stop, don't stop and shoot or something like that. It's like they don't have guns. The cops
yeah,
here. What do you guys? Can you make up a new chant, you lazy
yeah.
protesters?
So I mean, as America goes, the rest of the Western world goes. So it does
Well,
affect us.
that reminded me. You were talking earlier about like we were talking about Canada and like the just the stroke departure from reality our elites seem to have taken over the last little while. And I've always thought, like, even as a kid, like with cultural trends, Canada kind of always seemed to be like 4 years behind America. Like, if the puka shell was in America 4 years ago, it was now in Canada. Like, we were always just late to the party on everything. And I felt like, even during COVID, just seeing like what was going on in other countries, I felt like that was a very apparent as well. It wasn't even just like a cultural thing. It was like, oh, like we're just not changing policy, even though like the Germans and the French just made all these new rules. We're gonna pretend like nothing happened, like they're not doing anything, and we're living like 5 years ago in the past. And I think that's how we are with like our economy. We're literally gonna wait till everyone's on the dole line trying to get some potato soup before we're like, oh, we should have maybe have had less union enforcement on those job lines and maybe make sure those companies were profitable before we just came up with
Well, I
rules.
think the sad reality is the the boogeyman of Trump erased the last 9 years of economic failure that were presided, some would argue caused by, but at the very least presided over by the liberals. And then we did this sort of like, forget about that, like, look over here, forget about that, look over here, scary Trump, reset. And now, whatever happens after this, all the liberals have to do is go like,
Trump.
tariffs, Trump,
Yeah.
tariffs, Trump, Trump, and then everybody will be like, oh yeah, that's why my X costs Y, and that's why I can't, that's why I don't have a job. Like, are you telling me that this Stellantis and these other auto manufacturers weren't probably chomping at the bit to get rid of a bunch of deadwoods or cut a deadline without to have like an excuse to blame it on tariffs as opposed to, opening up
Themselves.
contract negotiations or, getting into a union fight where here they can just go, well, not our fault.
I
Whatever,
would
well,
hazard a guess. This just hit me. I would hazard a guess that there's probably something in the union clause that says like only if like federal tariff comes in can you do or like
yeah, absolutely.
you are,
There's going to
but
be
you
like,
are right. You are right. Like yeah, for sure they wanted to streamline operations because the car manufacturers they have a lot of issues right now themselves. Like they're not selling
absolutely.
units like they used to. They all have overpriced ones. Everyone's got recalls out the yin yang. Like it's not great. You see a lot of
it
cars
seems
sitting.
the it seems the whole economy is suffering everywhere, but it also just seems to be fine everywhere at the same time. Nothing makes sense ever since since COVID started. It's all seems like
Cattywampus.
a mirage. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how people are doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I think hedge funds gummied up the works. Once we started letting companies make capital off of bankrupting good like running companies, like things just went crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
well, I mean, when you think about it, most people don't do a real job anymore. Like, we don't make anything, we don't build it. I know that's something that Trump's trying to remedy, but everything else is a service job or an experience or this and that. And I mean, it's all highly optional. Um,
yeah,
it's an
obtuse,
optional
not really
economy.
tangible. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know, how does that sustain in I mean, you're always going to need your tradies running around and building and doing things. I mean, it's going to be a while before you have standalone robots doing complex
for sure.
renovations inside old houses, but all
Like
this other
in
sort of,
graphic design, yeah, those guys are the robots are
yeah,
chomping at the bit to do that.
yeah,
You are.
exactly.
Yeah, no, and that's the other problem. That's another problem that me and you talk about too, just on like a greater societal level, like let alone the country lens, but like just where we are in 2025 with the technology. That's huge. Like that's a whole other bag of wax. That's like, oof,
Bag of wax.
bring in the UBI because 60% of everybody's staying home now. But I also think that's one of those where if if everyone was staying home, I don't know. It wouldn't be that long until we weren't staying home. There'd just be new economies. Like if you were to take someone from 100 years ago and show them the economy now, there's so much stuff that would probably just rattle their brain where they're like, what? Who's now? What's the company do that makes like worth all the money in California? Like computer chips. Like that's wild.
No,
So,
I mean that. Well, I mean that's like the hope is that's the case. Like, I've heard a story once where they talked to, something like whatever, 1840, making up a number, 95% of the population
The
were
farm.
in the agriculture, right?
Yeah.
So you would go to an agricultural farmer and say, "Oh, okay, we're in the future. He's going to see a tractor, and what him and 100 men can grow, one guy with a tractor could grow in the
That
future."
wizard can grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the wizard. Yeah, and then and then you would try to explain to him that his great 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 grandson would be making a comfortable living as a massage therapist.
Well, he plays video games in front of a box at nighttime. Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
like his
So,
mind couldn't comprehend
so that's what I'm
the
saying. Like, our minds can't comprehend where the world goes after the AI kicks us in the gut for 40
right,
years.
but the problem and the differences here is
It goes to mech
before,
wars. We all become mech
well,
wars.
maybe the gear wars. Have I told you about the gear wars? Oh, you're in for a treat. No, but the point is, in the past, when we went from we made things and we did things and we built things and we built this sort of middle class economy that had extra money to spend on Disneyland trips, movie theaters, and bowling, and this whole other entertainment world. But we've kept pushing that now, so where we're gutting out that middle class. So now, if you just give everybody a baseline UBI, they're not going to have the money to be spending on these experiential
Well,
oh,
you'll
we're
vote
going to
on your
spend
week. You'll vote on
three
your phone.
weeks Yeah, exactly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people will be like that economy that we used to have, that transition can't exist again. It can't just be a bunch of people just mindlessly spending unlimited dollars without creating anything. That just doesn't even
Well, that economy
compute.
happened because we were the top of the food chain. We like the wars had just ended. Everyone's moving into the towns. We had just like we'd
Oh
won,
yeah, it
and
was
like
a
we were
a
most
one-off
technologically
experience.
advanced. Yeah,
Yeah, a
exactly.
one-off experience. But so now, in the past, you could still take like the jobs are not going to be like the bottom 20-30% of the population, 40, but it'll increasingly get a higher percentage, will literally be useless, like unemployable, right? Just like I've made this point before, like in the 50s, you could be, a decent guy, not too bright, but you could carry shingles up a ladder 40 hours a week and make a living. But now they have ladder lifts and nobody carries ladders up the shingles up the ladder over their shoulder. The weak people put it on the ladder lift and up it goes. And you could be a guy who he worked in a medium-sized construction company and primarily all he did was dig, but they don't have those guys anymore. They have one guy with a backhoe, and like, I mean,
So
people
what I'm
every
saying is,
year people are getting useless, and the only thing you could do is give them a subsistent UBI, and those people aren't going to be doing these new magical things that people are imagining. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to spend my meager money, but look at the incredible book I wrote that AI can write better. Oh, look at the neat craft I made in the thing, but I can duplicate it with a corner
you're
store.
you're painting a picture of like a Soylent Green meets Running Man, where it's
Well,
just
I no, it's more like mega city, super impressive people doing super impressive things, marrying other super impressive people doing super impressive things, and then the rural countryside, like, doing less and less impressive things and becoming less and less relevant to the, bionically altered superhumans. I mean, I'm talking over not over the next 3 weeks. I'm talking over a long time. But
newsflash. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I mean,
but it's inevitable, right? We can already see it, like out here rurally. Again, not a slag, just the people are moving at a slower pace. They have less ambitious desires compared to obviously like Manhattan. Like, these are not, surprising revelations that
for
people need to
sure,
go
but
places that for more ambition.
for sure, exactly. But it's different, right? It's a different focus of living. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
that country man most likely has a better relationship with his close family, right, over that city man.
Yeah, but that
You
doesn't
know,
make GDP number go up. So
Yeah, but GDP isn't all that matters.
It's all that matters to the people who are making the system that
You're,
work.
you're right, and that's not working anymore. Like
Right.
there's no family, and you can't just import new population to pay taxes. Like that is not working either. So like
No.
a great change will be made. Just like it'll just be by God. Like you can't keep running the lie forever. Especially with like the polar opposite experiment going on 5 minutes away. So it's not even like maybe we're on the right path. It's like no, no, no. We're 100% on the
Yeah, but
wrong
that's too
path.
soon. It's too soon to say, right? Like,
For sure,
I
no.
mean,
Socialism sucks, and at best we're socialist.
well, we're not. I mean, a lot of people can make an argument we're a long ways from being socialist in its true form. Um, you can still make money here and do your thing and whatnot. We're not walking around in our gray jumpsuits quite yet, but
Well, I
I
just
mean,
think oh,
I try to
we're
fast
due for a
forward.
10. Like next episode, hopefully we have something nice to say about Canada.
Well, I'm not slagging Canada per se. I'm throwing Canada in with the west of the rest of the West.
Well, with the AI
We've
conversation and all that, for sure. But I just mean like in general, it just doesn't seem like for the average. It seems like wherever we're talking about the world's going, like we're trying to get there faster.
yeah, definitely. It seems to be that way. Like what you and I would call a destructive ideology, we seem to be on like getting there as fast as possible.
They're
But
they're they're governing like they know the Star Trek technologies around like just 5 minutes away. Like everyone's getting
replicators for all.
yeah, the replicator. Everyone's getting a replicator. It's just a month away. We just need more government.
You know
Come
what I
on.
always wondered? Why wouldn't you, if you were Starfleet, why would you not make like a really huge replicator and then go, oh, we have some Ferengi coming, replicator, make 100 enterprises. Beep, 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 beep.
Do you think a replicator could replicate a replicator so big that it couldn't replicate itself, man? Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
yeah, you just cracked the code, right? So I mean,
Ah,
you would have
yeah,
won. You would have won the Kobayashi Maru with your
yeah,
little replicator
reprogram the
thing.
whole system. No, I mean, I'm not all doom and gloom on the future because I mean, I am in some, well, okay,
Depends what
I'm
gloom.
not. Okay, let me put this in the proper parameters. Maintaining, I'm very pessimistic that the status quo can continue. Uh, but I'm very optimistic that when you look historically, like hours worked for enough calories to live and enough like warm square footage with a roof and out of the rain to survive has never been easier to obtain. Healthcare, blah blah blah. I mean, maybe not so much to our brothers to the south, but at least here in Canada, you can be the biggest bum and you still have, people might argue, but we have adequate at the very least healthcare, and it's pretty easy to get all those things. I mean, if your expectation is go to high school, run track, go get some mediocre BA from McMaster, and then 3 years after that, be making X number of dollars and buying a house. That's probably not going to happen. But if you want to, pursue magical endeavors in this age of AI and live, maybe three people have to live to an apartment for it to be affordable. I mean, that's more of just a return to how things used to be instead
If
of
I
this
may,
fantasy glory age.
I think the sweet spot is kind of what we're doing, but at a younger age. And I have seen some younger people on the internet giving it a go out in the cabins lifestyle, so to say. Because if you're young right now, in my mind, call me crazy, but you probably want to get into some sort of like programming or AI, something to do with AI. Like that would probably be like you don't want to go into the course everyone's going
Well,
into.
that's not much of a revelation. It's like saying,
But
like,
my
buy
point
low,
is, you
sell
could do
high.
that. You could do that living off the grid with Starlink now. Elon's afforded you that luxury, so you don't have to
I
be in
know
downtown LA
for
with
sure,
with
but
three people to
but
an apartment.
you could also argue that there's is places that attract energy and ambition, and maybe as a young person, if you want to, like, you'd be better to live 15 people to a two-bedroom apartment for a length of time, and then maybe make some cash and get some skills, some contacts before you head off into the great unknown or whatever. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. The younger you get started, the better. You know, but I
I think
would, I don't know.
the hardest is on the families, because if you have a small young family, like it's really hard to talk your woman into like moving out into the woods. And there's a lot of cases to be made as to why it wouldn't be wise. You know what I mean? Especially for a young family, you're just like, well, we want to be near the hospital, and we want the kid to have friends. So it's like, okay, yeah, welcome to the city.
No, I mean, there's a reason why most people live in subdivisions that have families. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of
All
how it
the amenities
works.
are there for sure.
No, I mean, I mean, I dabbled with trying to live on a sailboat. I ended up building off grid. You're building rural, but not off grid, or renovating anyways. People live in vans, people live in, you know, storage units. I mean, everybody's trying to do something because everything's changing. I mean, it's not what it was, and I don't think that's coming back, no matter what Trump tries to do. I mean, God bless his dear sweetheart. He's taking a stab at it, or at least signaling that so people get behind whatever else he's doing. But
Like Trump was saying the other day, with like maybe you don't need $30, maybe you need $3. Where like I remember,
well, that's why I'm optimistic because, like, again, I'm well aware that
there's
the
fat to be
the
cut.
glory days, no, but the glory days are a small time that they were like those that post-war boom and that subdivision 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s ish was a that's the fantasy. This is back more to a reality, like a sustainable reality where people do legitimately live indoors or live, they share space, they live together, people work together. I would argue that people will probably have a better quality of life once they get past the shame, the shame of
Well, you're practical.
roommates.
I used to
Yeah,
say, it's better to have 10 things in your house that you use than 100 things, because you're never going to see like thing 91 to 100 maybe once a year. And like basically it's just like long are the days are gone of like that room grandma has that nobody goes in. You know what I mean? Like I remember in my younger years thinking like the foolishness of like people having these beautiful houses. And you realize like as you get to know different people, you're like, "Oh, everybody just uses like the kitchen and the one den, and like the like most of this house is never really occupied. I've never seen dad go in that office or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it
yeah.
just seems like such a waste. And there's a case to be made, yeah, and it is. So, but hopefully there's like it seems to be a lot of that, like a lot of austerity lately where we're due for like a little of that like they say we'll own nothing in 2030, but like what's the be happy part? Where's that come in? Is that just like the only option? Like you have to be happy. It's like or you're not allowed in? Like no, I don't.
No, I always revert back to every sci-fi movie that I've loved. Even Brave New World. There's always the pockets of resistance. There's always the
Mhm.
places that are like below ground or out in the countryside. And I always remember, if you remember from Brave New World at the very end of the book, the guy who just won't seem to play along with the rules and he thinks he's going to be killed or tortured or whatever, but the superior says that he has to go away to a place for people just like him who just don't quite fit in. And he kind of implies, if I remember correctly, that he actually just might like it there. And again, implying, I can't remember the exact words, but it was implying society, even though it was well controlled and they were doping everybody up, they realized that there are some people who just don't fit the mold, and they didn't kill them and they didn't murder them. They just didn't allow them to mix with general society, and they sent them off somewhere altogether. And again, implying this guy just might like it there. So I rest in that kind of. I mean, again, we're all playing in the world of fiction or trying to foresee the future, but these fiction writers, they do open, like, because they're humans, they understand the human condition. They can kind of be, foreshadow possible outcomes. And when you have a bunch of them all sort of foreshadowing that no matter how technologically advanced society gets, there's always an underground of people doing their own thing. And that sort of always gives me hope that that'll be where I can,
Well, like
find
how
my
about
home.
the dandelion that you see growing in the crack on the highway? Where you're just like, no matter what, like life will always beget life.
Yeah,
So
life finds a way. So I'll find a way to rebelliously anti-participate yet participate in the system, whatever that means.
ditto.
But I don't know. That seems to be a good spot to stop.
Thanks for watching,
Um,
buddy.
Absolutely. So like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends and family. Peace out, everyone.